he's still working on a biography, and the biographer was talking about some of his correspondence and interaction with Mr. Turner, and he literally said he was near suicide in terms of observing what's happened to his baby, his brainchild, CNN, under Zucker. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Zucker wasn't good for CNN. He wasn't good for anybody. He's gone. Let's see what CNN can become. I think the next person they have to get rid of is Brian Stelter. But
I
we'll
think he's
see
on the
what.
way out.
Wouldn't surprise me. There's been a lot of talk that he's the next to go.
Yes, no question. But we also talked about before the show in terms of looking at the Olympics. We talked about that last show, I should say, and it's just official now. The lowest rating ever, not last year. I'm talking ever, and not surprisingly so. So the
No,
genocide Olympics, abject failure.
yeah, people stood up against the Olympics because it was ridiculous. You know, it should never have been given to China. And actually, speaking of China, I just received a news alert. The Department of Justice has announced that it is ending its China Initiative program. This program was aimed at preventing spying by the Chinese Communist Party. And they are canceling this program because of accusations of bias. Seriously,
The,
we are putting, let's make China feel good and let's not make them feel that we're picking on them in front of our own national security.
well, wokeism comes into everything. You look at General Miley Cyrus; he's a perfect example of that. A couple other things on the agenda: the trucker convoy that we saw play out with little Justin Trudeau, the maitre d, turned into fascist. That will be coming to America and may end up in Washington D.C. March 6th, right at the perfect time of
Well,
Joey's State of the Union.
now let's clarify that the trucker convoy that's coming to DC for the State of the Union is not the same convoy that's in Canada. This is a convoy
No,
that
no, no. I'm saying it's oh, no, no, no. You misunderstood me.
yeah,
No, Canada is Canada. This is starting in California and going to end up in Washington.
right.
No, totally separate.
Yes, they're
Might have been
going.
inspired by them. Yes.
Yeah, they're going to converge on DC just in time for the State of the Union. The Capitol Police announced that they don't have enough tow trucks to get rid of these truckers once they arrive. So they're putting up barriers over streets. They're blocking off things ahead of time because they're terrified of hearing Americans voice their opinion.
Yes, that's where we've come to. I think it's not going to be a great State of the Union. I remember Jerry Ford is almost comical, almost like a Saturday Night Live skit, which they did a lot on with him when he said the State of the Union is not good. So I wonder what Joey will have to say. But speaking of the State of the Union, excuse me, you have basically the new phenomena that hasn't been experienced by Americans in over 40 years, and that's stagflation. And stagflation is the phenomenon of low growth and high inflation. Usually it's high growth and inflation, but this is a double whammy that really affects marginal people on the marginal economy. Your thoughts? And to
Yeah,
that, by the way, consumer confidence is the lowest in, I believe, 5 months.
yeah, consumer confidence is dropping. Inflation keeps rising. Biden's numbers on the economy are underwater because he keeps hammering away. Well, wages are going up, wages are going up. When inflation averages 2 to 3% above wage growth, you're not making more money.
That's
So,
kind of higher level math, though, for Joey. I mean, he's still working on one goes, 10 goes into 100, carry the one,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, I think that's pretty high level stuff for him.
Well, I mean, we've
given his current state of.
we've obviously seen that Biden hasn't gotten past C spot run, so
Yes, exactly.
we can't expect him to understand these higher concepts. But yeah,
Do you
people
think he
feel
understands the concept of the debt is now over 30 trillion and his prescription for lowering inflation is more spending? Doesn't that about summarize his thought process, mental ability and lack thereof?
Well, honestly, I don't think there's anybody left in the government on in either party
Wouldn't argue.
that cares about the debt anymore, which is ridiculous because so much of this debt is owned by China that it's actually a security risk. But I don't think anybody in Washington cares. They just want to spend. And this is
Yeah, they
both
want.
parties.
I'll agree, and let's just close out on this. I have a feeling that given it's a once in a lifetime opportunity with Biden and Camilla and the rest of these woke moron generals and military people in power, I believe within the next year, China will attempt to secure Taiwan. Not only can they do that militarily, but we have very little few options on the table. We can do this, that, and the other. If they say, okay, you want to get tough, we're going to call in our debt. Check, please.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. And right now, that is a massive national security issue. And also, tying it into everything else that's going on, it's also the reason why we need to defend Ukraine. Now, I don't want to see troops on the ground in Ukraine. I don't want us sending, the military over. We can give them air cover. We can send them as many weapons and support them as much as possible without our troops. But the fact of the matter is, if we let Russia just walk into Ukraine and do nothing, China sees this. They're watching. They go, okay, this means they're not going to prevent us into going into Taiwan. Iran is watching. It tells Iran, oh, they're not going to stop us taking over our neighbors and increasing our funding of terrorism.
And nuclear proliferation, yes.
Yes.
Everyone's watching, and it's a domino effect. I hate to bring something up from the 60s that at that time was inaccurate. This is not inaccurate. This time, the domino effect applies. Final thoughts, Dr. Lopkin.
Yeah, we are in a ridiculous situation. And the fact of the matter is, it is completely self-inflicted. If we had, even electing Biden, if he had just left Trump's policies in place, this would not have been happening. I don't remember who it was, but somebody early on pointed out all Biden had to do to be a success
was go back in the basement.
Was do nothing and just leave everything operating on autopilot.
And that's the only thing we can assume. But that goes with the assumption that he wasn't beholden to the left, and that's his epitaph. That was his undoing. He could have just shut up, let it all happen, and get some chocolate chip ice cream. That would have been it. Well, another edition of Carnivore Bites is done. Great show, and we're accessible almost everywhere, aren't we?
Absolutely. If you want us to look into an issue specifically, or you have a comment or question, you can get a hold of us at xvadio.com/connect. And to hear every episode of this podcast, as well as the rest of the Xvadio Podcast Network, you can go to xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin.
We'll see you next time.